Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
Jaime and Fuego here.
Producer Dave.
Back to do another movie review for you guys. This is a couple of weeks late at this point because the film is in the theaters, but we didn't get to see it immediately like some people went to do. But Fuego and I were both really excited about this film because I thought it was going to be a creature movie just as much as a sci-fi movie. However, while it didn't end up being that, entirely, it was still something I was excited to see. Fuego, you want to go ahead and introduce this one? Because I know it's a director that you particularly love.
Well, he's only done one directorial film, but he's written a lot of stuff. We're talking about Mr. Alex Garland, the guy who did my favorite film of 2 years ago, which was Ex Machina. He also had written tons of stuff before this. He's a buddy of Danny Boyle's. He wrote Sunshine. He wrote 28 Days Later. He wrote The Beach. He's also written tons of other novels and things like that. So yeah, for his second directorial film, he hooked up with Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac, who was also in Ex Machina, and put together this. It's a smattering of drama, sci-fi, a little bit of horror. It's really just a smorgasbord of all kinds of influences. I personally felt like he balanced it all very well. I feel like there might be some differing opinions on this. But yeah, I'm very excited to discuss it.
Annihilation.
Yes.
Thank you. I was just wondering if it was going to happen. All right, guys. So we're going to talk about this like we normally do, our overall thoughts, then story, acting, effects. Definitely, I want to talk about the production design in this film. But let's talk about the overall thoughts. Fuego, why don't you go ahead and go first then?
I love this movie. I did. I really did. I enjoy thought-provoking sci-fi, and for me, this was definitely not your run-of-the-mill silliness. It definitely asked some interesting questions. It really took it to kind of a genetic and biological level with some of the concepts that they put forth as far as just that the multiplying of cells and just how things can mutate and change and stuff like that when they're in just a completely different sort of environment that's isolated. I thought the performances were great. I thought the set design that I know Cecil wants to talk about was good. While don't go into this expecting like a ton of creatureness, but when it's there, I thought it was top-notch and very well done. I felt like Garland balanced all of these different things very, very well, at least for me personally. Cecil, what do you think, man?
I liked the first 4/5 of this movie.
There's a lot of people who agree with you, actually.
Yeah, I really dug the setup. I was completely intrigued. I was not a fan of the subplot that ended up going nowhere. Because they kept going back to something and back to something like it was going to lead somewhere, and then it ended up not. So that bummed me out. However,
I'll tell you. I'll tell you off camera.
Yeah,
what
exactly.
I think that was.
And that's fine. I might have just missed something. I'll admit that. Because this did strike me by the end. I was like, maybe this is just one of those movies I just don't get. Because that happens sometimes, but that was the case until Andrew explained the Black Coat's daughter. But this one, I think I got it. I just didn't like how it ended. I was totally on board, all the way up until then. But yeah, the ending just kind of bummed me out. But overall, I have to say I enjoyed it. If the very end is all that I didn't like, it was a good long movie. So that's still a good portion of it that I can say I enjoyed. Dave, what about you?
Overall, I enjoyed the story. I thought it was an interesting story. It's kind of typical sci-fi, like an event, right? The event is happening. What is it? Nobody knows what it is. And then scientists are sent in to explore. Any typical Michael Crichton is very similar to this. So the formula was there, so you could recognize it. I liked that. I love Natalie Portman. She's my future ex-wife. So
Man,
she was great.
God, she's got them high cheekbones, though. She
was great.
So gorgeous.
She was, and she's a little bit of an ugly crier. She cries a couple times in the movie, and that threw me off.
I disagree.
I mean, she's a wonderful actress. Don't get me wrong. I think when she cries, she's
well, maybe I was commiserating with her a little bit.
Okay.
Right?
But overall, I thought it was weird because I was watching it, and I'm like, God, this feels like The Arrival. Like I was just Arrival, sorry.
Not Charlie
Feels
Sheen,
like Arrival.
Amy Adams.
Because of the pacing. And I think that's what it was. I think it was the pacing. It was this kind of slow...
You can't. It's easy to compare the two. Just to remember where you're at, just to explain to Fuego, because it is, something has showed up, and it's the government trying to figure out how to approach it and what to do. That aspect is very similar.
Okay, there's very, very broad connection.
Yeah, very broad.
No, it's the whole setup of the film.
But that's my point.
Is that broad connection? It's the
tone of the film and the fact that this is R-rated versus PG-13 and just the... Well, I guess, I can see with the relational aspects and stuff how maybe there's some connections there.
Well, I don't think there's an actual connection. I just mean as far as
similarities.
My perception,
I
felt a lot like, oh, this is kind of like Arrival. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a slow, drawn-out exposition film where they're going to reveal something right at the end. There was some action. I enjoyed the action parts. Natalie Portman's a badass. She got military training at some point in her career because she knows how to hold that rifle.
She summoned her inner Ripley, and that's where I felt so much of a difference between that and Arrival.
Yeah, and obviously,
and the actual menace part of it, and the fact that
she channeled her inner Ripley one time in the whole movie. What are you talking about?
A couple times.
But overall, I thought
when she's exploring,
I thought it was an interesting, unique sort of like, sci-fi saga or tale or whatever. And I did really like the way that the Jessica Lee and all the team came together. Jennifer Jason Lee, they came together. I'm not a huge fan of Isaac's.
Well, you're getting into all the stuff throughout the rest of the review.
Overall, I did enjoy the story and the plot, and I also had I was kind of like at the end, I was like, oh, that was easy.
Yeah,
it felt like an easy ending.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I did enjoy it, and I think it was really well written, and it was good. I liked it.
Fuego, you want to go through the story kind of briefly for everyone?
Yeah, and first and foremost to keep in mind, this is actually based on something called the Southern Reach trilogy, but only based on the first book in the trilogy. This guy, Jeff Vandermeer,
that makes sense,
he wrote this in 2014, but apparently Garland only had access to the first manuscript of the first novel, so he had no knowledge of the fact that there was going to be a second and a third book that look at different characters, different facets. One looks more at the organization, another looks more at like scattered characters from the first two books. I want to read those books now, honestly, because I bought into this world. So essentially, there's an inner space event of some sort where basically something comes from space. Yeah, they show it. Something comes from space, and it looks like a meteor or some sort of like beacon of light or whatever smashes through a lighthouse, and once that happens, a tiny little it's almost
the shimmer.
The shimmer as they call it, but it looks basically like a wavy force fieldy type
bubbles.
thing. Yeah, that is just growing and growing and growing slowly over the course of about 3-something years.
3 years.
They say it happens, and so they start sending. Obviously, first of all, they want to know what the hell is going on, and so they start sending teams in. And once we meet Natalie Portman and her compadres that she ends up joining up with, they are one of the much, much later teams. None have come back. Everyone has either gone crazy or died, and they have many theories about why this is happening.
They don't know if that's what happened. Those are just the leading two theories.
Yeah. But only one person has ever come back, and should we say who it is, or should we just leave
Well, no, that is part of the setup. I mean, it's Natalie Portman's presumed dead husband,
who she hasn't heard she's heard nothing from in a year.
For a year, 1 month, and 9 days.
Close enough.
So she's pretty sure that he's dead, and then all of a sudden he just shows up at their house, and he's definitely not acting himself. And definitely not acting himself. And so
relax, man, Jesus.
So she's working at Hopkins or what? Prestigious medical university as a biologist. I can't recall. John Hopkins. That's the one. Yeah, there you go. And so when her husband comes back, she's rushing into the hospital, and then you find out he's in very poor health after returning from this mission, and she gets mixed up with the people who have been leading these missions, and she decides to join up, and she wants to find out what happened with her husband, and she joins up with this right. It's all ladies. It's definitely very. I don't want to use a derogatory term like chick-centric or something, because that's terrible on my part, but it's definitely female empowering as far as just the badassness of these ladies, and they range from probably the toughest, which is Portman, through the spectrum of being scared and so on and so forth. But no.
Well, I was gonna say I disagree that it's female empowerment, because literally the reason they're sending in the team of females is because it's like, every other time it's been men. Let's just try this out. Right. It's been military men. Let's try scientific women and see what happens. And then, you know, by the end, it's not necessarily that it was because it was women that anything might have been accomplished. If there's anything that's accomplished, I'm not going to ruin that. But you know, I see what you're saying. Like, I was tempted to feel that way too, but in examining of the movie, there's really nothing that makes it sort of female empowerment outside of the fact that it is a female cast. So within the film, it's not female empowerment. Within society, our society, it is female empowerment because, you know, most of the cast that we follow is, you know, 5 women.
Right.
So.
I disagree, but that's fine.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, we're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't really buy the whole female empowerment. However, I kind of agree with both of you. Because they definitely had a female cast. So in our society, there's a little bit of female, you know, empowerment. But I actually think it was like one of those things where it was like, hey, you usually see a bunch of guys go out with guns. What's it like if a bunch of girls do? I think that's, I mean, I think that's what it was. I think it was as flippant as that. Is like, let's just put a bunch of females together. I don't think it was anything more significant
it's something
than that.
different to do in a sci-fi movie. Yeah.
No.
And also, I think I liked all the girls' stories a little bit. I mean, I know they didn't really get too deep into their stories, but I think they had enough conversations between the characters that you kind of liked all of the characters. Even Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, who you weren't supposed to like.
They were all kind of damaged, as they allude to it.
And it was really weird to have Natalie Portman ask him for Ventress, because I watch a lot of Clone Wars, and Ventress is one of the bad guys.
Oh, okay.
And she's in Star Wars, and anyway.
It
was really weird. Anyway.
Again, I liked the first 4/5 of the story.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoyed that. I did not like what they did with the end. I agree with Dave. I thought the end was way too easy. However, it was still an interesting path that we followed the entire time.
Yeah.
So story-wise, I was impressed. Now, acting-wise, go ahead. Did you have
I was just gonna say I love the story point of just things mutating and being totally different inside the bubble. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
About I mean, there's one scene in particular where there is a character who thinks something is wrong with himself, and then when you find out what actually happened to him, that was one of my favorite scenes of the entire film. I thought that was just beautifully put together.
You know what? That's the thing, and let's not do acting next. Let's segue into production design, because that is exactly what you're talking about. There's something that happens to a character that then, when it's discovered a sort of unknown amount of time later, it's this unbelievable, like, sort of organic design on a wall. And to Fuego's point, and this is what I wanted to talk about, he mentioned that there's sort of genetic combining and redistribution and refraction and things going on within the shimmer, which is all part of the mystery, but it's causing things over the course of 3 years. It's caused things to sort of blend together. You see in the trailer, there's a crocodile with, like, aspects of shark teeth, you know, rows of teeth, just like a shark. There are, it's not just animal sentient life.
Well, and the little deer characters with the tree.
Right. Well,
antlers.
that's what I'm saying. It's not just the animals, the sentient animals. The plant life has merged, and, like, now a single plant can, like, have multiple different kinds of flowers on it. Or, and there's really, really interesting, like, humanoid, like, plant formations and shit. And, like, it just made for one of the most interesting movies I've sat and watched visually. Every new place they walked into, especially when we finally get towards the lighthouse area, and you get, like, crystal trees and shit. I'm like,
it's stronger the closer you get to the
so
original.
amazing. All the different stuff. It just made
stunning
for a stunning, gorgeous setting for us to be able to sit through and watch. And that same point, you know, there's a dark side to every light, made for some truly terrifying encounters with the animal life.
Oh yeah, one in particular. Wow.
Oh
dude.
my god, I can't wait to get to that. But
and that's one thing that I have to interject real quick. That's kind of sad, is that the studio got cold feet on this. And after it was already set to be released in the U.S. and China by Paramount decided, you know what, maybe this is too heady for people, it's too whatever, and just this past week they sold the rights of it to Netflix internationally, so this is not going to be in theaters internationally. And Alex Garland is really disappointed about that, because he's like, this is a film that I think needs to be seen on a big screen because of that impressive visual aspect that we were just mentioning. And so there's some people disappointed about that. But, you know, I mean, it's going to be in March available everywhere except here, which is kind of funny. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, visually amazing. That was one of the high points along with the acting in this film.
Spectacular.
Well,
Spectacular visual effects, spectacular
Well, we're not talking
production
about
design.
visual effects,
Well,
production design, and we can segue into cinematography.
I'm kind of like lumping them together because of the overall design aspect of it was so uniform and so beautiful. And I swear to God, they're walking through a national park, and it looks like another world sometimes. And it was absolutely gorgeous. And I'm going to say this from a production design standpoint: making new flowers is one of the hardest things you could ever do. Creating new flowers that look alien, that don't look from Earth, is tough. Mm-hmm. And they did a really good job of kind of like, oh, this kind of looks like a lily, but really don't know. This kind of looks like this, but it's just different, just enough. Yeah. So those little details, I think we were talking about, those really details add up, and you really get immersed in the story.
Well, and the production design and sets go hand in hand with the cinematography and the way they're all revealed throughout the film. I thought the cinematography was incredible in this movie. Yeah,
and the way it builds as you get closer to the lighthouse, like you mentioned, you know, it gets more intricate, it gets more impressive, it gets more otherworldly the closer you get.
So yeah, I mean, the cinematography was fantastic as well. Let's circle back to the acting before we hit the the other effects and things like that. I thought Natalie Portman did an excellent job.
She's wonderful.
Ugly crier or not, I don't find her an ugly crier, but
me neither.
I'm with Dave. I'm not a fan of Oscar Isaac.
I mean, I like him as a human being, but as an actor,
I don't like him as Poe. I don't like him in this. I didn't like him in Ex Machina very much either. Like,
he was a very different character in Machina, though. He was that flamboyant, silly kind of.
I liked him in Machina.
Well, I liked him the most in that.
Yeah,
but I just he's I don't know. He doesn't do it for me, man.
Well, after watching the end of the film, I have to give him a little bit of credit because it makes more sense the reason that he acted the way he did once you know what happens at the end of the film. But at the beginning of the film, you have to sit through an hour of being like, oh, I didn't really like him. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the film, you're like, oh, crap, now I got to watch it again so I can maybe like him at the beginning.
I had no issues with his performance because you could tell that he was scarred and came from an insane place and like memory loss or something.
Oh, he's a competent actor.
Yeah. So, I mean, I felt like that's the way he was written, and so he just did what he was told essentially there. And I mean, there wasn't really much room to explore with the way his character was written early on in the film.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we need to talk about the women, the team that goes in, headed up by Jennifer Jason Leigh,
who I did not like.
She was okay.
She's just okay. Yeah, she felt
it was similar to the one we saw her in. What the heck was it? The Morgan.
Yeah,
she had a similar woodenness to herself in this that she had in Morgan. Where I'm like, why are they casting her in these kind of roles? Right? Is she supposed to be like the old grizzled, like almost like Glenn Close, but like not anywhere near as much gravitas kind of thing.
And then, but she doesn't. Her character doesn't feel like commits. Like she's still like. She's still approachable and things like that, and I feel like she needs.
She still goes with the team. Like when the team says something, she's like, "Yeah, let's do that."
She was
until she's like, "No, you guys do what you want. I'm going to do this." But there's not enough there. There's not enough fire. Like
they tried. They kind of had that one-off line where they explained why
her motivation, but still, that wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough either. Yeah.
But the other girls were good. I liked the Hispanic chick.
Yeah. The ponytail girl was good.
I was going to say Gina Rodriguez, who's on like Jane the Virgin or something like that, the hardened chick from Chicago. She actually had the most interesting turn, at least character-wise, in my opinion, where you start to wonder: are they actually going crazy, or are they, being genetically modified, or is it a combination of both, and that inherently causes insanity or something? But yeah, she was good. Tessa Thompson, chick from Thor Ragnarok. I thought she was good. She was the more like nerdy, she was not the biologist. I forget what her role was, but she was the most
the physicist.
The physicist, yeah. There you go.
And she had. Well, I want to spoil
what happened with her was interesting.
But yeah, what happens to her was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really liked that.
Yeah, I did too. The way they did that, I was like, nice.
That was kind of cool.
Nice.
So you know what? Let's see. The what else was the visual effects. I definitely want to hit that specifically outside of just the set, because yes, a lot of the sets in production design were augmented visually. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But there's there's specific visual effects they use throughout the film. Again, when certain trees, something happens to trees later on in the film, as well
all
as
the microscopic stuff.
Yeah,
they
all the
did.
microscopic stuff, and then sort of something we see at the end of the movie inside the lighthouse.
Right.
Was really, really visually interesting,
Yeah.
like kaleidoscopic almost. Like it was so cool to see that.
Well, I was tripping a little bit because what's it, Eddie Wong? I think his name is Eddie Wong from Doctor Strange was there,
Yeah.
and Doctor Strange had all that really trippy stuff too. So I was kind of like, oh, he likes doing acid movies. There was definitely a moment of this movie where I felt like I was tripping on acid.
Psychedelicized. Yes, indeed.
Fuego, what do you think of the visual effects?
Visuals are impressive,
Yeah.
and they solidify just that otherworldly nature that you had from the production design, from the cinematography and everything. Man, I felt like I was in a different world, and while there's some practical, and then there's a decent amount of CG for some of these creatures and stuff, and I thought the CG creatures, whether of the intimidating and predatory variety, or just the regular ones like the deer that you guys mentioned.
deer were cool.
I thought they all looked great. The monster that
I want to
impressed
talk
us
about
the
that
most,
in the
but
spoiler.
yeah.
I think we mentioned one spoiler at the end, maybe, and it's that, because we have to mention it. It's so
good.
cool, but it would ruin something.
It would. It totally would.
Because the thing that happens with that was the most unnerving thing I've seen in a movie in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I was cringing, dude. And
Yeah.
I was just like, whoa.
But yeah, Dave, visually, visual effects.
I think much like Ex Machina, they added to the film. They enhanced the film. They weren't the film.
Yeah.
Like a Marvel movie. Sometimes
Or Transformers.
the special effects
Yes.
are the film.
Right.
Yeah. This movie was subtle when it did use the CG, and when it didn't, it couldn't be subtle. It was really well crafted, really well done, well interacted, well lit, all that stuff. So it was a AAA visual effects movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
While there may be some issues with the story here and there, I felt like it was practically perfect with the acting and with the and visually especially. It is a visually stunning film. That still makes me sad that people internationally are not going to get to see it on a big screen, because I feel like this does need to be seen on a big screen. So,
I'm sure it'll do well for Netflix, though.
Yeah, well, most things do, except for maybe Paradox. But anyway,
Well,
and yet a lot of people still watch that. So.
yeah, of course they did. Well, I think that's pretty much all we can say about the film without spoiling. So I do want to mention one last thing before we go that would be considered spoilers. So for those of you that don't want to have this thing spoiled, thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention this because, Fuego, you explain what the creature was, and then I'll explain the really fucked up aspect of it.
I got a really easy way to describe the creature.
It looked like a cross between various things. It looked like part bear, part gator, part like
Really?
Yeah, that's the way.
I thought it was a
giant
bear.
dog.
I thought it was a bear with this part of its face gone.
Yeah.
Like they just ripped the skin off of this part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That
Left
is what it
all
looked
the
like.
bottom part.
Yeah.
And then you had like no lips on.
Well, and it
was
comes at the most
freaky looking.
insanely ill-opportune time, because Gina Rodriguez's character has gone pretty much nutsoid and has all of them tied up on chairs, the surviving ladies at least, after Jennifer Jason Leigh's left. And or actually,
Well, no, but
she was still there.
But
She was
before
still there.
that, it attacks them at one point, and it takes one of them. And it takes her, and
Are we
they,
sure that was the same character?
Yes.
Yeah,
And they're the same monster?
Yes.
yeah, it was this. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
'cause
absolutely.
it's
no,
got her voice.
That's.
What? Or,
All right, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, it was the same character because she
now I
gets
remember
she
why.
gets taken, and the girls are trying to run after her, but the thing takes her too fast, and she's screaming out in the woods as it's like taking her away and stuff like that, and eventually they just lose it. They can't get her and find her, and then later in the movie, when Gina Rodriguez has them tied up and you don't know what the hell's going to happen.
Natalie Portman does go and find the dead body, so she does confirm that the girl's dead.
Exactly. She confirms that the girl's dead, but then they're all tied up, and Gina Rodriguez thinks that Natalie Portman's a liar, and she hears the screaming outside the house, outside the shed thing of the girl who was taken, and she's like, "You were lying. She's okay." And she grabs her gun and runs out. And then you hear a bunch of mauling or whatever, and then you see the shadow of this huge bear creature that we're getting a good look at for the first time. And like Dave said, the top half of its face is taken off, but the most unnerving thing is it wanders in, and then it gets like right up behind them, their backs are to it. It basically kind of rears its head up to roar, but instead of roaring, you just hear like this really messed up version of their friend's scream. So what's happened is the genetics have combined when it ate their friend. Like, they even kind of try and explain it later where the scream and her crying out for help got absorbed into it. And so it literally, the thing walks around the room and like sort of like does the whole thing a killer does and like waves a knife in their face essentially, except it's its face, and when it does, they just hear their friend screaming right in front of them. It was so absolutely unnerving, and I was like, I can't believe I'm seeing something so like that alone makes this review worth doing on the horror show, in my opinion.
And also when you see just the state of the body that was dead and like a chunk of the throat missing and stuff, it makes sense that would be, you know, what like immersed into this big ass creature and stuff. So genuinely scary. It made me cringe. It did.
Well, it's definitely a subject of sci-fi that we've never seen before. This is definitely a unique, original story. Like I said, it kind of sets it up, your standard sci-fi, events happening, people show up, but the actual what's going on, spoiler part, is actually, I thought was really interesting. And they did such a great job, again, back to the production design, of designing all this stuff that's supposed to be combined that you would not normally combine.
Right.
Yeah,
so
if this thing keeps spreading, it's annihilation. It's the end of the world. Obviously.
But it wasn't destroying stuff, right? Because that's kind of like
the ending. Making something new.
Yeah,
making
as they said in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, guys.
What was it making? I don't know.
Well, part 2 and part 3 most likely. Yeah.
Overall, though, we enjoyed the film. If you guys are even remotely interested based on the trailer, go check out Annihilation. It's worth your time, even if you might end up not liking the very end like me, like apparently a lot of people have. However, there's a lot of people like Fuego that also like it all the way through. So
there's a lot of debate amongst podcasts and all these different professional reviewers doing spoiler reviews and doing ending explained stuff. And there's a lot of discussion, a lot of mixed feelings about it. But I say check it out for yourself. You will, if anything, you will appreciate the predominance of this movie. I would say
it'll spark a conversation between you and your friends. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So
and Natalie Portman.
Yeah, that too. So thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate it if you do. And check out the link to our TeePublic site down below. That way you can support the show and get yourself some cool horror swag, some horror show stuff. You can even get Horrific Harry over there on your shirt.
A t-shirt.
But yeah, thanks very much for watching. I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, I've been Jaime Fuego.
And I'm Producer Dave.
Until next time, remember,
stay scared.